And Maury Turner is awesome, super awesome. They're leading a conversation on justice, reimaginment, and rebuilding, and helping guide Oklahoma away from fines, fees, shame, and incarceration. Maury made it into office by knocking on doors, introducing themselves, and listening, and it worked. Maury's margin of victory? 248 votes. Yeah, every vote counts. Folks, a lot is possible, a lot, if you count every vote. There are people in every corner of every state who are fighting hard to get every voice heard. If you don't know who represents you on your city council, in your state legislature, on your school board, I want you to remedy that. Do some research, find out who they are and what they're fighting for, and then ask yourself some questions. Are they inspiring your faith in humanity? Because that's on the table. Are they fighting to make sure everyone in your community gets heard? If so, amazing. Do what you can to support them. Reach out, introduce yourself. Their job is hard, and your support is meaningful. If not, can you contact them and urge them to do better? If so, wow, great, do that. That's all lobbying is. It's not that hard. If not, if that doesn't work, can you find the person in your community who is fighting for those things and help them get elected instead? If so, great, do that. If not, if you can't find that person, are you ready to become that person? If so, congratulations. There are a lot of amazing organizations that exist to help people like you run.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me, excuse me, tonight on Talk. I am excited to be here with you. We have a wonderful show that is planned. I'm a little under the weather, but it's okay. We're going to press on and we're going to do what we have to do because I'm excited about the show. I think it brings about some wonderful things that we need to talk about. I think it's all part of the narrative and what we're going through and what we're living through right in a time like today. So I want you to comment. I want you to like. I want you to subscribe. I want you to put something in the chat. Let us know what you think about Real Talk with Gene Price. How can we help you? How can we bring topics that are relevant and topics that speak to where you are and where you want to go? That's what my team and I are all about. So tonight we have a wonderful show in store, and it's entitled The Power in Politics. The Power in Politics. And I think we can all agree in a world like today, there's a whole lot of stuff going on. So we want to dive into it a little deeper. We want to kind of see what's going on. But I'm excited about my guest on the show. He is no stranger to Real Talk, but when he is on Real Talk, he always brings about knowledge. He always brings something for us to chew on and kind of think about. Help me welcome Ty Hankerson to Real Talk with Gene Price.
Hello, Lady Price. How you doing?
I am good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be with you this evening. I'm also a little under the weather, so excuse my voice and my grogginess.
Listen, as I'm talking, I can feel it in my head. I feel it in my throat. But we're gonna press our way through. Thank you so much. And even under the weather, I really do appreciate, and I can speak on behalf of my team and myself. Thank you so much for still agreeing to be on the show. I do understand there's a lot going on in the air, so we want to take care of ourselves as well. You are no stranger to Real Talk. You're no stranger. I meant what I said in the intro. Whenever you're on the show, you always bring about something that's so thought-provoking. And that's what I love about our show, Ty, that we can have a dialogue and a conversation that provokes another conversation with others. So thank you again for that. So why don't you introduce yourself to our people that, may not have seen you before on our show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Ty Hankerson, born and raised in Southeast Queens, which is the area in which I not just live, but also serve. Recently, I've had the privilege of becoming the new Deputy Chief of Staff for New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. That's my day job.
That's huge.
Yeah, and she was the first Black woman to lead the New York City Council. And this also happens to be the most diverse council in its history. I also serve as the executive director of the Fred Wilson Democratic Club, also here in Southeast Queens. And all in all, I'm a servant. That's what I'm called to do, and that's what I love doing. I love serving people. I love serving God, and this is what I feel like we're all called to do. So, that's
Well, first of all, let me say this, Ty. Thank you. Thank you for being a servant on behalf of all of us that you're serving the community at large. That's huge. That's first of all, that congratulations. That's a huge promotion, huge. We thank you, and I think I can speak for my guests for all that you're doing in the community. But let's dive right into it and let's talk about this. As someone that's been involved, right, Ty, in politics, how important is it to understand our history and how we've earned the right to be informed and also to vote? Let's talk about that because it took a lot for us to get to the place that we now understand we can vote, right?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So I'm wearing one of my favorite shirts, which says "voting," and it says "a way to voice your opinion while making a difference." I picked up this shirt from I believe, a 16-year-old entrepreneur, 16 or 17-year-old entrepreneur at a street fair, and I seen this shirt, and I'm like, I gotta have it, and I wear it quite often now. And the reason I do so is because it showed me a couple of things. One, it showed me that the next generation is a lot more aware, right? And that's good. I'm glad that they're not losing awareness
Right.
when it comes to civil rights and voting rights and just being involved, period, civically. Like you mentioned, it has taken a lot for us to get where we are, right? We have seen in 2008 the election of the first Black president of the United States of America. Now in 2020, we've seen with the election of Joe Biden, the first Black woman vice president of the United States. And now, watch this, we have the first minority leader of the United States in the United States Congress. The Democratic leader is Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn, a Black man. And so it goes to show that if you keep pushing, if you keep going, if you don't give up, there's endless possibilities. We seen in the 60s with the civil rights movement with Dr. King and the protests that went on. We've seen several things come out of that. We've seen the Voting Rights Act come out of that. We've seen the Civil Rights Act come out of that. And that was because a group of people got together and said, look, we are not going to give up. We're going to fight for what we believe is right. And that's what they did. And so now here we are in the 21st century. That was the 20th century. In the 21st century, in the year 2023, and we're fighting again for our rights to vote. Right now, currently, in the House, we have the bill, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and also the George Floyd Policing Act. Two different bills, but both of them affect our people greatly. And unfortunately, they didn't pass in the Senate. They got struck down, and so it takes us to really be active in our communities and in our local politics to really bring about change.
Right. Yeah, you just opened up a whole nother wide door to me in bringing that up. And I appreciate that, Ty, because how important then is it for us to engage ourselves in our local elections? Because, it's just, and we get the presidential, that's a huge thing over there. But locally, as a community, as a culture, what can we continue to do? How important is that?
Well, let me start off by saying this: all politics is local, right?
Okay.
That's a statement that I heard many years ago, and I'm starting to understand what that means more and more. All politics is local, and so it is extremely important and imperative for us to be involved in our local elections and know who our local elected officials are. It's not that because someone would say, well, our local electeds and our local politicians, they have more weight when it comes to everyday people. It's not that they have more weight. It's just that the policies that or legislation that they enact, it will be enacted faster most of the time. Whereas when it's on the federal level, for example, like I mentioned, the Voting Rights Act and the George Floyd Policing Act, those haven't passed yet. But although they haven't passed on the federal level, in New York City, there was a package of bills that was passed immediately when it came to policing right after the incidents with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And so on the local level, things happen a lot faster. And that's why Ty, you tend to feel the effect of the local level a lot stronger than you feel the effects of the federal level. Both are important. It's
Right,
just
right.
one tends to move a bit faster than the other.
Understood.
So
Wow. Some people, a lot of people feel that they feel kind of failed by our governmental
yeah.
system. So how, if somebody wanted to get involved, like yourself, you started somewhere and then now you're here. So if somebody else, to your point, Ty, if they wanted to get involved with politics on that local level, how would they even get involved?
Yeah, so there's several ways of getting involved. One of the easiest ways to get involved is getting involved with your community board and or your civic associations in your neighborhood.
Okay.
Your community board, we tend to call it your first level of governance. And so your community board tends to handle a lot of your local issues before it even reaches to the council member. And so, for those who want to be or want to get involved, I would definitely suggest start going to your community board meetings. You can Google it, right? What is my community board? If you live in New York City, you can say, what is my community board? And you'll find it. Start going to those meetings. A lot of them now are on Zoom, but others are in person. Whatever it is, get involved that way first, right? It'll start your brain to turning, and you'll see the issues that's really affecting
Yeah.
your neighbors and those around you. And it also gives you a voice in the matter if you join the
Yes.
community board, because now you have a vote on that
Yeah.
board.
It's true. It's really true. You can't help what you hear, right? And it's just so interesting. Once you hear it, hard to want to do something about it. So I do have a question for somebody that's been convicted. I've even heard this that they can't vote because they have a felon. Is that true? Are they able to vote? Like, can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because there's a lot of people that have been convicted of something, and
Yeah.
those are votes that we can take or receive. What's the truth behind that?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that question. Many folks, who are quote unquote convicted felons, lose their right to vote. One of the things that I've seen of recent, I can't speak too much on it because it's not my
Sure.
field of expertise, but one of the things that I've seen recently was a movement starting with an organization. I wish I remember the name of the organization. Excuse me. Where they are fighting to reverse that because folks that have served their time, in my personal opinion, should be able to vote. If you did the offense, we get it, and you serve your time.
Absolutely.
Once you come out, you should have the right to vote. You should have the right to say who represents you. And so, like I said, there's a group that is there's several groups actually that are fighting to reverse that. And so I don't know where it is in the process right now, but I
Right.
do know that there are groups that are working on that. But that is a great question.
But thank you for even saying that, because I feel, tied to your point, it gives hope, because there are people that have those strong beliefs as yourself and like some of us, and they want to be able to to what your shirt says, allow their opinion and their voices to be heard, especially in a culture like today. And I just heard on the news, and you can correct me if you like. I just heard yesterday something on the news with Malcolm X, something with Malcolm X and his family, and some kind of suing and something going on with New York City. How can we kind of help or erase some of the stigma? It's so many stigmas to me with our Black cultures, those that have fought, those that have had voices. And I know I might be asking the same question, but in a different way. But what really can we do, Ty, to help bring about just change? And from a church perspective, right? Because we could talk about this in church and a non-church perspective. Because let me just keep going, because our young people, you said it earlier, the next generation are preparing. So we need to prepare our generation. We need to talk about apologetics. What are some of the things we can do?
Yeah. So let me address the stigma question
Thank
first.
you.
So there is, of course, stigma surrounding several things within our community. Mental health is one.
Yes.
Government involvement is another. And the list goes on and on and on. And I think the best way to fight a stigma is through knowledge. And so it's educating folks on, certain topics so that they have the knowledge to move forward. As long as there is ignorance creates a roadblock every single time. And as
Yes.
long as it creates a roadblock, I will think that roadblock is normal. And so if I'm trying to travel on a road, but I keep running into this wall, my ignorance will tell me this is normal, when in reality, it needs to be knocked down. And so education is the hammer to knocking down walls of ignorance that have been built over time. And so to answer your question, to fight a stigma, we need more education. Right.
Okay.
We need proper education when it comes to certain topics. We need proper education when it comes to a certain thought processes that our culture or our people tend to have. I can tell you, growing up, I knew folks that just didn't get involved. Since we're on the idea of politics at all, they didn't get involved at all. Partly because they felt like government doesn't do anything for me, right? They feel like government, it doesn't do anything for me. And so one of the lines I would hear is, I don't do politics. Well, here's my response to you.
Okay.
Do politics, politics will do you.
Wow.
And it will every single time, everything that is passed by way of legislation, by way of policy, it will affect you in some type of way. And if you don't get involved and if you don't get your voice out there, you can't complain.
Right.
You,
Right.
you can't complain. And
Right.
so one of the suggestions that I give to folks, especially in the next generation or the younger, I'm saying the next generation, but in my generation and the generation after me,
Right.
is to get involved and stay involved. One of the
Mhm.
difficulties that many people have is that they get involved, but then they lose interest after a while.
Okay.
Losing interest, it doesn't help us at all.
Right.
People always say that there's power in numbers. The more you have folks that are staying interested and staying together, the more impactful that you are. And so I encourage folks, get involved and stay involved. Even when things seem wary or when things seem like, I don't know if this is working, or if you lose an election, because watch this, the person that you like won't always win. Right?
Wow. That's so
The
true.
person that you like won't always win. And it's not a failure in government when the person that you like doesn't win, but it teaches us, you know what, next time we got to strategize better. We got
Yes.
to do this a little differently. We got to reach out to this neighborhood and this neighborhood. We have to activate people. Activating people in politics means this: getting people registered to vote and getting them active in their communities. Activating people in politics. There are untapped communities of people that are just unactivated. And they just need someone to come along and tell them, hey,
Yeah.
get involved. This
Yeah.
affects you. And one of the easiest, I would say, easiest ways to activate someone or to get someone involved or interested, I should say, is to talk about the policies or legislation that's affecting their families.
Okay. Okay.
Whether it's paid family leave or whether it's childcare or whatever it is, right? That gets people involved right away.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's something that affects them every single day.
I have to ask a question as I'm even listening to you speak, and the viewing audience is definitely engaged. When did you realize personally, Ty, that it was your passion? What you're doing is your passion.
That's a funny, that's a funny answer to that. So I was in fifth grade, and I remember taking a liking to government and politics. I don't know why. And I remember walking home with my god sister, and my god sister, she lived two doors down from me, and so I was going to my door, she was going to her door, and so for some reason she yelled across the block and said, "Tyrell," that's my full name for folks that don't know. "What do you want to be when you get older?" And immediately I said, "A pastor."
Oh, okay.
That was my immediate response. And then she said, "What?" And I said, "The president." Right? And so in that moment, I don't know what sparked in me, but it sparked two realities in me. And I realized that I had a leaning and or inclination toward ministry and inclination or inclining toward politics and government. And so the first campaign I worked on, I was 16 years old. I was a field director on a campaign, and
Wow.
a lot of my friends from high school. And we, were working on that campaign. It wasn't the best experience, but it was an experience.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
From there, I just got more and more involved civically, joining the board of Queens Hospital Center, and then the Jamaica Now Committee, which was a committee of folks charged with reviewing certain things that would come towards the revitalization of South Jamaica,
Okay.
or what we would call now downtown Jamaica, which is Jamaica Avenue. And so got involved in that, and the rest was history. And so in 2017, I got a phone call from my then a friend of mine who was becoming the chief of staff for Council Member Adams. Um,
Okay.
and he asked me, he said, "Do you want to join the team?" And I said, "Sure." And I joined the team as her scheduler and
Mhm.
events coordinator. One of the most difficult jobs I think in government is scheduling. It's
Okay.
a very difficult job. Uh, only the strong survive.
Right, right.
And eventually, I moved from scheduling to becoming director of community outreach. And then my boss, the council member, got elected speaker. And now I serve as her deputy chief of staff with oversight over her district office.
Wow. We're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back with Ty Henderson. This is so informative and it's so good. And what you're speaking, Ty, I can hear it's like you're speaking such value that's really helping our communities, and we appreciate that. But we'll be right back with Real Talk with Gene Price.
And Maury Turner is awesome, super awesome. They're leading a conversation on justice, reimaginment, and rebuilding, and helping guide Oklahoma away from fines, fees, shame, and incarceration. Maury made it into office by knocking on doors, introducing themselves, and listening, and it worked. Maury's margin of victory? 248 votes. Yeah, every vote counts. Folks, a lot is possible. A lot, if you count every vote. There are people in every corner of every state who are fighting hard to get every voice heard. If you don't know who represents you on your city council, in your state legislature, on your school board, I want you to remedy that. Do some research, find out who they are and what they're fighting for, and then ask yourself some questions. Are they inspiring your faith in humanity? Because that's on the table. Are they fighting to make sure everyone in your community gets heard? If so, amazing. Do what you can to support them. Reach out, introduce yourself. Their job is hard, and your support is meaningful. If not, can you contact them and urge them to do better? If so, wow, great, do that. That's all lobbying is. It's not that hard. If not, if that doesn't work, can you find the person in your community who is fighting for those things and help them get elected instead? If so, great, do that. If not, if you can't find that person, are you ready to become that person? If so, congratulations. There are a lot of amazing organizations that exist to help people like you run.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Gene Price. We are having a great conversation tonight and talking about politics, how it affects us in our culture, how it affects the next generation, what we can do as a community, as a society to bring about change. I want to bring back my guest tonight, an expert in politics from my point of view, Mr. Ty Hankerson. Welcome back to Real Talk with Gene Price.
Thank you
Welcome
for
back,
having me
sir.
back. Yeah. Thank you for calling me an expert. I don't think I'm an expert, but I
Well, I'll say this. You sound the expertise is there in what we're talking about, full of knowledge, and just even if it means just opening up a box, a Pandora's box to understanding. That's expertise to me, because there's some of us that aren't as engaged in politics, like myself and maybe those that are watching tonight. So you are bringing about knowledge to help us understand better. So we definitely, again, we appreciate that. What I want to go back to something we were talking about, young people. And how do we get young people to know the people that represent them in their district? Like, where do you go? Do you Google it? How do we know who's representing who in the districts, different districts?
Yeah, so there are really simple ways to find out who your representative is. You can go to Google, of course, and if you're looking for your council member, you can go to the New York City Council website and type in your address. And when you type in your address, it'll tell you who your member is. Same for the state assembly and the state senate. Very easy process of finding out who your member is.
Right. So another question I have for you, Ty, is how do political decisions affect different groups? I mean, when people make these decisions, you're in the trenches, right? You're there. You have your boots on the ground, in other words.
Yeah.
When decisions are made sometime, are you okay with them? Can you do anything about them because because of your position? How does it, what can you do can you feed us? Can you tell us? What do you do with all that?
Yeah. So me in particular, or are you saying how can anyone?
Well, I want to start with you because, like I said, apologize, two-part question because your boots are on the ground. You hear, you see. Is there anything you can do about what you hear and you see before us? Before
Yeah.
we? Okay.
Sure. And I'd say this process is probably the same for anyone.
Okay.
If you see something that you feel should be addressed, or there should be some type of legislation addressing a particular situation or issue that's going on in your community, the best thing for you to do is go to that Google, find who your representative is, and then set up a meeting with them. Reach out and set up a meeting with them and speak to their legislative director and bring your idea. Now, I can't tell you how many folks have brought ideas to their local elected offices, and their idea became a bill and eventually became the law, right? It starts with the idea. And so anyone who may have an idea about, a particular issue or topic, bring it to your elected official and see if there is a way for that idea to become the law.
Wow. Do you set up anything? My husband used to do career day years ago, go into the classrooms and kind of talk about, he's an entrepreneur. From a political perspective, is there anybody from that arena that would go into classrooms and kind of talk to students or high school students, those that are preparing to go to college? Everything might not be the grind of to be a doctor or a lawyer. Maybe there are some students, Ty, that want to go into politics. Do you guys go into high schools and kind of talk to the high school students and kind of gear them in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how many high schools I went to just for career day and explaining what I do and what the city council is. And because a lot of folks don't know what the city council is or what they actually do. Right. And that's okay. So again, it's all about bringing that education to our communities to say, okay, the city council is a body of 51 members. They represent all parts of New York City. They make the laws for New York City, and they also have oversight over the budget in New York City. And they also hold city agencies accountable, like NYPD, Department of Finance, DEP, Department of Buildings, right? This is the role of the council. And so I've gone into schools, and I will even say last year I had me and one of my younger brothers, his name is Cleve. We created a program called Engage NYC, and we were in a high school for a few months, and we taught students weekly civic engagement, politics, and activism. Civic engagement, politics, and activism. Those are the three things that we focused on because they're three different things, even though they coincide quite often, but they're three different things. And, we did that for about, I want to say 4 or 5 months. And the culminating event was we took them up to Albany to the Black Caucus weekend. And they got to meet different legislators and see the Capitol and all that good stuff. And so that's how you, again, spark the interest, especially of younger folks. Well, will everybody be interested? No, the reality is not everybody's interested in most things, right?
Right.
You will find at least one or two who are interested. And they will then spread it, and they'll spread like wildfire from there.
That's good. Now, you mentioned those 3 things, and I thought that was great. Can you just mention those 3 things again and just tell us, to the viewer, what those 3 things are and what they mean again? That was really good.
Yeah, so civics, activism, and political engagement.
Okay. And then in the meaning behind each one is?
Yeah, so civic engagement, it could look like different things. It could look like you being a part of your community board, like I mentioned earlier, or part of a civic association. Get involved civically that way. You have activism. So if you have a particular topic that you feel passionate about, you could lobby, or you could be the person that, that spreads information on that topic to the community and or elected officials, so you can be an activist in that right, or political engagement, getting involved in campaigns and elections, right? And so although the three things are separate, they work together. So civics, politics, and activism, they all work together.
Right, right. That's good. I'm going to bring up this topic, and it's probably very sensitive to some and probably to most of us, but what's going on with our Black men, right? With the beatings from cops and so forth. What can we do from a political perspective to help win this world against what happens to our Black men?
Yeah. That is a very, very, very important and very sensitive topic, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Currently, I'd say I can speak for the council itself. There are only one, two, three Black men in the city council out of the 51 members. Um, there is a perspective that Black men have that oftentimes in several spaces isn't acknowledged. And I'm not saying that for the council, just in different spaces that Black men are in. There's a perspective that's oftentimes not acknowledged. Our stories, how we live our lives,
Yes.
that we go through is very unique.
Yes.
Very unique. I don't know if there are any other groups of people that have to consistently be concerned about when you're getting stopped by the police, how that night's going to go or how that traffic stop's going to go. Not saying others aren't concerned, but there's a certain level of fear and anxiety and trauma that comes with that. Yeah. And so having Black men in spaces of power is helpful because it brings our perspective into those spaces of power. And that's necessary. That is needed. And so I always celebrate when a Black man is in a position or a space that we haven't occupied in the past or that we rarely occupy. I celebrate that because it shows me that somebody who understands my walk, my journey, is sitting in a particular space of power, and they can affect decisions. They can make decisions that can affect me directly, hopefully in a good way. And so, yeah.
Wow, that was good, because I often think about that, with everything that's going on in a world like today. It's so important for us to be able to let our voices be heard in those particular situations. I appreciate what you said about having somebody that is African American, that is the representation, because it's important. I mean, it's what we're facing. You mentioned George Floyd earlier.
Yeah.
This is what we're facing. You talked about young people. This is what they're facing. I have 4 grandsons that are coming up in a world like this, and I want them to be able to hear a person like yourself talk about what's going on and what we can do better. As young Black men, that they realize that their voices are going to be heard. Our show is winding down, but I just want to go a little further and talk about, from your perspective and from a church perspective, what can we do as pastors? Because some of us are pastors, and we want to talk about this in our churches, not to bash anything, come against people, but to make it revelatory. What can we do as a church?
Yeah. So as a church, especially, and I can speak to the Black church, I think it is extremely important for us to bring up the topic of voter education. The Black church has been in several movements, especially the civil rights movement, the backbone of a lot of the things that were, that got done. A lot of the successes came out of the Black church, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., right? And so, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend, and the list goes on. We can't afford to falter now. We can't afford to take our hands off now and say, hey, that's not our business.
Right.
We're going to leave it alone. No. We can't afford to do that, because the policies, legislation, it will affect you whether you take your hands off or put your hands on.
Yeah.
And so you have to, again, my opinion, you have to educate your congregants, your parishioners on voter education, right? I can't tell you necessarily who to vote for. I can't tell you who to vote for,
Right.
but I can tell you to go vote. I can
Yes.
tell you to be educated, right? I can tell you to really find out who your representative is and go set up a meeting with them or their staff or their team. Find out
Yes.
what they stand for, what their policies are. Find out, because there are several things, especially I can speak for the council, that's funded by the council that folks don't even realize is at their fingertips. There's several programs that the council funds, and you can take advantage of it. But because of the lack of knowledge and the lack of awareness and education, people don't know. And so it's really getting that out there, and we really need our partners in the church to help us to get that information out, so that when people are going through hardships and hard times, they know where they can reach out to.
Yeah. I love the term you use, partners. I think that's very fitting. That represents and shows that we're in it together. I
Right.
think that is so good. Final words from you, Ty, on literally politics. Give us your final thoughts before we close the show.
Politics is not something that we should be afraid of. Engagement, involvement
Mm,
should be something that we are all part of. Service is what we are called to do.
yes.
That's our calling in humanity, as human beings, is to serve others. Scripture tells us to do that. And so I think one of the greatest ways to do that is through civic engagement, political involvement, and activism. Get involved. Find a nonprofit where you can serve it. Find a way, if you have a candidate that you like, find a way to get involved on their campaign, or volunteer in an elected official's office. Get involved. Know who your leaders are. Know what the powers that they have. Know these things, because the more you know, the more you're able to help others. Again, like I said earlier, the wall of ignorance can only be knocked down by way of education and awareness. So be the one who has the hammer of education and awareness, knocking down ignorance time and time again. That's how we win.
Well, I would dare say to those that are watching tonight, speaking on behalf of Ty, thank you so much for being on Real Talk. I think it's been proven that you are definitely in the perfect space to make a difference, and we appreciate that. We appreciate what you've said tonight. Just engaging, like going back and taking to our churches. I mentioned it to my husband. Just engaging our young people, the next generation, and what you're doing and how they can get involved to make a difference. Tonight, thank you so much for being on Real Talk, Ty. Thank you to my viewing audience. The power in politics was put so plainly, and exactly what Ty said, getting involved makes a difference. We don't want to be ignorant anymore to any devices. We want to make sure that we have the wisdom and we choose to move forward and make a difference in this big old world called the kingdom of God. Good night. Thank you for joining me on Real Talk. Thank you.
And Maury Turner is awesome, super awesome. They're leading a conversation on justice, reimaginment, and rebuilding, and helping guide Oklahoma away from fines, fees, shame, and incarceration. Maury made it into office by knocking on doors, introducing themselves, and listening, and it worked. Maury's margin of victory? 248 votes. Yeah, every vote counts. Folks, a lot is possible. A lot, if you count every vote. There are people in every corner of every state who are fighting hard to get every voice heard. If you don't know who represents you on your city council, in your state legislature, on your school board, I want you to remedy that. Do some research, find out who they are and what they're fighting for, and then ask yourself some questions. Are they inspiring your faith in humanity? Because that's on the table. Are they fighting to make sure everyone in your community gets heard? If so, amazing. Do what you can to support them. Reach out, introduce yourself. Their job is hard, and your support is meaningful. If not, can you contact them and urge them to do better? If so, wow, great, do that. That's all lobbying is. It's not that hard. If not, that doesn't work, can you find the person in your community who is fighting for those things and help them get elected instead? If so, great, do that. If not, if you can't find that person, are you ready to become that person? If so, congratulations. There are a lot of amazing organizations